Okie dokie. So this first problem is the rooftop problem. And you might remember we started this about 2 months ago when we began to do the Pythagorean theorem. So two sides of the roof have to be equal. Well, they don't have to be, but they told you this was an isosceles triangle up here on the top of the house. So that means that we have an isosceles triangle, and that's really good to know. So I went ahead and used little tick marks. And so these two angles on the bottom are congruent. With an isosceles triangle, one of the angles is different. And that's the angle in between the two congruent sides. So the 108 is different. Okay, so I labeled the other two angles x. Okay, then it's just more convenient to do the math. So don't know what those are, so I'm calling them x. Okay, so you could solve this problem. Finish that for you, but that will get you the value of the angle the roof makes with the horizontal. The horizontal would be the bottom that goes left and right. Okay, well that wasn't too demanding. You might not have known how to do it. That's a different issue. I didn't finish solving this. That's what you got to do on your own. I'm just going to give you a little bit so that you can get the help that you need. Okay, now the next problem. This was a little demanding. This is where you have two congruent adjacent sides. This is called a kite. That's the geometric shape when you have a four-sided figure in which the two adjacent sides are congruent. It's called a kite. You could also see this as two isosceles triangles put together. So we've got the two isosceles triangles, one on the left, one on the right. That's another way to think about it. Okay, so we want to find the angle at D. I went ahead and labeled the two angles on the right side x, because for the isosceles triangle on the right, the 36 is in between the two congruent sides, so the other two angles are congruent. So I just labeled them with the same letter x. Okay, and then for the other isosceles triangle on the left, I labeled those two y. There was one other piece of information I forgot to put here. And then they told you the angle that combines the x and y, they told you that was 108. That was this angle. Those two combined to be 108. That was another piece of information that was given to you. Okay, well, we can find the two angles that are congruent on the right isosceles triangle. Okay, so we can go 36 plus x equals 180. And you can solve that. Now, once we know what the angle I'm labeling x is, since we know these two angles combined to be 108 according to the problem, we can find y by subtracting the x from 108. So y equals 108 minus the x. Okay. And if we just wanted y, we're done. But if we also want this other angle, I'm labeling D. I think the problem said angle ADC. I'm just going to call it angle D because since that's the only angle there, it's clear that's what that means. So let's find the angle D. But once we find the angle y, we know these two are congruent, so we can just use the sum of the interior angles again. Or we can just subtract from 180. So angle B, we just subtract from 180 the two angles we got that I'm labeling y. Okay, so these two problems were based upon isosceles triangles, the properties of isosceles triangles. Right? Only the angle in between the two congruent sides is different. The other two are the same. And you could say the angles opposite the congruent sides are also congruent. You could also say that. Okay, so again, I didn't finish the problem for you. Right? You need to solve for the values. I'm just giving you the setup because that's the challenge on your end that you might need help with.